escalating feud with China. Right now we've got the S&P little change, down less than 0.1%. NASDAQ up now by 50. That is a gain of 0.5%. We're on track for a winning week here. The Dow down 93, a drop right now of 0.4%. 10-year up 7/32 with a yield of 0.66%. Gold up 0.9%. 17.34 the ounce, and just as importantly, crude now trading back above $35 a barrel. 35.14 latest quote on WTI. West Texas Intermediate up now by 4.2%. Governor Cuomo says New York City is likely to meet state metrics by next week and reopen June 8th, but face masks won't be going away anytime soon. Dr. Andrew Pekosh is a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
Masks are only one part of your protection. They shouldn't be viewed as sort of a panacea, as if I have a mask on, I'll be safe completely from infection. They're just one thing of several that you have to do to protect yourself from the COVID-19 virus.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Occidental Petroleum cutting its quarterly dividend by 91% to cope with the pandemic-driven collapse in energy demand. Shares of Occidental, ticker OXY, Oxy, down by 4.1%. Among some of the other big major energy names, ExxonMobil shares, they're trading higher by 0.4%. BP down 1.1%. Shares of EOG Resources down 1.8%, and Pioneer Natural Resources down 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Business Flash now. A check of world and national news. Here's Bob Moon.
Charlie, thank you. A Minnesota prosecutor has charged a police officer with third-degree murder and manslaughter in the restraint death of George Floyd. Now, Floyd is the handcuffed black man whose cries of "I can't breathe" in a widely seen cell phone video set off days of violent protest in Minneapolis and around the country. Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman said today he may yet bring more charges against the officer, Derek Chauvin. After having one of his often incendiary tweets flagged by Twitter for possibly glorifying violence, President Trump is seeking to clean up his remarks. In his initial tweet, Trump attacked protesters in Minnesota, calling them thugs and warning when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Twitter obscured that tweet with a warning of its own that it could encourage violence. Well, now President Trump is trying to clarify that. He now says that looting leads to shooting, and that's why a man was shot and killed in Minneapolis on Wednesday night. He says, look at what just happened in Louisville with 7 people shot. He says he doesn't want that to happen. And that's what the expression put out last night meant. He also says it was spoken as a fact, and it's very simple. Nobody should have any problem with this or any other of the haters. He said he wants to honor the memory of George Floyd. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon. Jason, back to you.
All right, Bob. Thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser with you. China has been front and center this entire week. We're expecting any minute to hear from the president. Before we take you there, let's get some context leading into it with Dexter Roberts, Mansfield Fellow at the University of Montana, former Bloomberg Business Week China Bureau Chief. He's also the author of a fantastic and timely, relatively new book. Came out earlier this year. It's called The Myth of Chinese Capitalism, The Worker, the Factory, and the Future of the World. He joins joins us on the phone from Montana. Tiff, really nice to have you back with us. So this has been a pretty remarkable week, and I remember catching up with you earlier in the year, and the Hong Kong protests were still, very much going on in many ways. It was sort of as we were getting into the pandemic. As you look at what's going on between the U.S. and China now, what's the most important thing we need to know?
Well, I think that the decision by Beijing to pursue this national security law, which frankly was a surprise to a lot of the world, is a clear signal that they are not in a mood for compromise. And I think they knew before they made this move through the National People's Congress in Beijing that the response would be overwhelming, and it really has, with condemnation from countries around the world. And frankly, far more, an uptick in the protests in Hong Kong. So they knew this was going to happen, but they decided to go ahead.
Well, what? Okay, so it's interesting. But I am kind of still, curious about the timing of this and why now.
Well, I think that their calculation is that what with COVID-19 and the world being distracted with dealing with the pandemic, they can actually get away with doing this now. And I think it's something they probably intended to do all along. And this seemed like probably an opportunity right now.
And so what are the implications? I mean, especially from an economic perspective. If you ran China for the magazine, you understand the economics of China so well and the economic relationship between the two countries. What's at stake here, in your estimation, Tiff?
Well, I think they are demonstrating that their desire to have clamp down on these growing protests in Hong Kong and have and basically sacrifice this promise they made to give Hong Kong a high degree of autonomy is they've decided that this is worth doing simply because they cannot tolerate this show of what they see as unrest and what frankly is seen as weakness in Beijing to have these protests ongoing and not have a response from Beijing. So I think they've made that calculus. I think the impact is likely to be huge, and particularly on Americans and American companies. We've got, I think, last count, 85,000 Americans living in Hong Kong, over 1,300 American companies, including all our major financial companies. They're all in Hong Kong. And depending on how this unfolds and what we hear from the president later very shortly, there could be a retaliatory move that would strip the special status of Hong Kong, which would have an enormous impact on American business and global business in Hong Kong, and an enormous impact on the Hong Kong economy.
Tiff, why would the Chinese risk that and put that at risk?
I think we run the risk when we look at China of not realizing how important it is to them to have firm control. And the party, which of course is the government of China, it matters very, very much. Xi Jinping has been very bold about being far more assertive that the power of the party, the role it's trying to take globally is far more assertive, whether it's Hong Kong or the South China Sea. And I think politics in control. This is a demonstration of sort of the old ways that have sort of resurfaced under Xi, where economics comes second.
Well, is it also, though, they need to do this to survive? Vince Signorella, who watches markets for us, and he and I have been going back and forth about China all week, and he said, they've got a really pressing problem in China right now. The Communist Party's 1% of the population. They've only got military to really protect their power base, and there's a lot more pressures coming from the masses, right, who either want change or are not living in a great way, and there's a lot more pressure on the government.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Carol, what you've been discussing there. I think they are aware that they're going to be facing a very difficult economic environment later this year. We've already seen huge layoffs employees in China, they're readying for a shock to their export sector with the downturn in the rest of the world. And often we've seen the response, somewhat interesting, somewhat surprisingly perhaps, is to make a gesture like this. And I think part of it is almost an effort to distract the populace from problems at home. Chinese people, they can be quite proud about the rise of China. And this is a way to say, look, foreign forces are trying to hold us back, and they're doing it in Hong Kong. And don't blame us for economic problems at home. Look at what the world's trying to do to China and Hong Kong.
Well, and it's interesting, Tiff, as we think about from our perspective in the world, in the Western world specifically, and what Hong Kong means, I think it's hard to overstate the importance that has. And I think we've talked about this with you before, that it has in the global financial markets. I've been coming back to this time and time again across this week, that it holds a remarkably important place, literally and I think figuratively in some ways, in being such a key part of the global financial system. Again, as someone who's seen that up close and personal, what's at stake to be a little parochial about it, what's at stake for Wall Street here?
Well, as I said earlier, we have over 1,300 of our top companies operating in Hong Kong. We have all of our major financial companies. Yeah. They've used Hong Kong as a perch in Asia to do business in Greater China. And that role that Hong Kong has played is frankly, at greater risk right now than it has been in many, many years. And so I think the impact could be very, very devastating for Wall Street. And frankly, I'm not very optimistic looking at. I don't think that they've left the U.S. with a lot of choice. We have this thing called the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act that Trump signed in November, and it states very clearly that the State Department does an annual review, and they have to show that China is still giving Hong Kong a high degree of autonomy, or we have to alter the relationship that we have with them and take away the special privileges that Hong Kong has on tariffs and so on. And quite frankly, the national security law shows that China is no longer guaranteeing that Hong Kong has this high degree of autonomy.
What's interesting, Tiff, is, and you know this so well, you understand China, you understand, foreign businesses coming into China, and the thinking was better for us to be involved in Chinese society, that we will help facilitate change, right? And that was the thinking of a lot of global multinationals. And yet, it hasn't necessarily played out that way, or has it?
I think we were overly optimistic, and that was, of course, the rationale for giving China most favored nation and permanent normal status back under the Clinton administration, and then China entering the World Trade Organization in 2001. And it really hasn't turned out that way. I think it's fair to say that. I remember I was in Beijing in '97 when Hong Kong was returned to the mainland. I remember writing a piece, and this was quite common, saying Hong Kong will change China. The free ideas, the free economy there will change China. And I was wrong, and a lot of other people were wrong as well. China is intent on changing Hong Kong, and they don't seem very concerned about what the rest of the world thinks.
Do they have to be concerned, or can they do their own thing? They're so massive, and I just do wonder what their role is in the world at large going forward. What does it need to be, or does it not? Can they just kind of do their own thing?
Well, I think they are overestimating their ability to go it alone. But it is worth noting that when Hong Kong was returned to the mainland, its GDP was about 1/5 of the total mainland economy, and now it's about 3%. They haven't made a lot of progress, but there's been efforts by China to build up Shanghai as an alternate financial center. Again, not very much progress made, but it is a fact that Hong Kong is very important. I think it's very important as a sort of symbolic. The policy towards Hong Kong shows us what China is thinking about economic reform. But it is, frankly, less important to China than it was those many years ago.
All right, Dexter, Tiff Roberts, thank you so much. Mansfield Fellow at the University of Montana, former Bloomberg Businessweek China Bureau Chief, author of The Myth of Chinese Capitalism, The Worker, the Factory, and the future of the world. Let's head down to Washington now and the President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm here today to talk about our relationship with China and several new measures to protect American security and prosperity. China's pattern of misconduct is well known. For decades, they've ripped off the United States like no one has ever done before. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year were lost dealing with China, especially over the years during the prior administration. China raided our factories, offshored our jobs, gutted our industries, stole our intellectual property, and violated their commitments under the World Trade Organization. To make matters worse, they are considered a developing nation, getting all sorts of benefits that others, including the United States, are not entitled to. But I have never solely blamed China for this. They were able to get away with the theft like no one was able to get away with before because of past politicians and, frankly, past presidents. But unlike those who came before, my administration negotiated and fought for what was right. It's called fair and reciprocal treatment. China has also unlawfully claimed territory in the Pacific Ocean, threatening freedom of navigation and international trade. And they broke their word to the world on ensuring the autonomy of Hong Kong. The United States wants an open and constructive relationship with China, but achieving that relationship requires us to vigorously defend our national interests. The Chinese government has continually violated its promises to us and so many other nations. These plain facts cannot be overlooked or swept aside. The world is now suffering as a result of the malfeasance of the Chinese government. China's cover-up of the Wuhan virus allowed the disease to spread all over the world, instigating a global pandemic that has cost more than 100,000 American lives and over 1 million lives worldwide. Chinese officials ignored their reporting obligations to the World Health Organization and pressured the World Health Organization to mislead the world when the virus was first discovered by Chinese authorities. Countless lives have been taken and profound economic hardship has been inflicted all around the globe. They strongly recommended against me doing the early ban from China, but I did it anyway and was proven to be 100% correct. China has total control over the World Health Organization, despite only paying $40 million per year compared to what the United States has been paying, which is approximately $450 million a year. We have detailed the reforms that it must make and engage with them directly, but they have refused to act. Because they have failed to make the requested and greatly needed reforms, we will be today terminating our relationship with the World Health Organization and redirecting those funds to other worldwide and deserving urgent global public health needs. The world needs answers from China on the virus. We must have transparency. Why is it that China shut off infected people from Wuhan to all other parts of China? It went nowhere else. It didn't go to Beijing. It went nowhere else. But they allowed them to freely travel throughout the world, including Europe and the United States. The death and destruction caused by this is incalculable. We must have answers, not only for us, but for the rest of the world. This pandemic has underscored the crucial importance of building up America's economic independence, reshoring our critical supply chains, and protecting America's scientific and technological advances. For years, the government of China has conducted illicit espionage to steal our industrial secrets, of which there are many. Today, I will issue a proclamation to better secure our nation's vital university research and to suspend the entry of certain foreign nationals from China who we have identified as potential security risks. I am also taking action to protect the integrity of America's financial system, by far the best in the world. I am instructing my presidential working group on financial markets to study the differing practices of Chinese companies listed on the U.S. financial markets with the goal of protecting American investors. Investment firms should not be subjecting their clients to the hidden and undue risks associated with financing Chinese companies that do not play by the same rules. Americans are entitled to fairness and transparency. Several of the most significant actions we're taking pertain to deeply troubling situations unfolding in Hong Kong. This week, China unilaterally imposed control over Hong Kong security. This was a plain violation of Beijing's treaty obligations with the United Kingdom in the Declaration of 1984 and explicit provisions of Hong Kong's basic law. It has 27 years to go. The Chinese government's move against Hong Kong is the latest in a series of measures that are diminishing the city's long-standing and very proud status. This is a tragedy for the people of Hong Kong, the people of China, and indeed the people of the world. China claims it is protecting national security, but the truth is that Hong Kong was secure and prosperous as a free society. Beijing's decision reverses all of that. It extends the reach of China's invasive state security apparatus into what was formerly a bastion of liberty. China's latest incursion, along with other recent developments that degraded the territory's freedoms, makes clear that Hong Kong is no longer sufficiently autonomous to warrant the special treatment that we have afforded the territory since the handover. China has replaced its promised formula of one country, two systems with one country, one system. Therefore, I am directing my administration to begin the process of eliminating policy exemptions that give Hong Kong different and special treatment. My announcement today will affect the full range of agreements we have with Hong Kong, from our extradition treaty to our export controls on dual-use technologies and more, with few exceptions. We will be revising the State Department's travel advisory for Hong Kong to reflect the increased danger of surveillance and punishment by the Chinese state security apparatus. We will take action to revoke Hong Kong's preferential treatment as a separate customs and travel territory from the rest of China. The United States will also take necessary steps to sanction PRC and Hong Kong officials directly or indirectly involved in eroding Hong Kong's autonomy and just, if you take a look, absolutely smothering Hong Kong's freedom. Our actions will be strong. Our actions will be meaningful. More than 2 decades ago, on a rainy night in 1997, British soldiers lowered the Union flag and Chinese soldiers raised the Chinese flag in Hong Kong. The people of Hong Kong felt simultaneously proud of their Chinese heritage and their unique Hong Kong identity. The people of Hong Kong hoped that in the years and decades to come, China would increasingly come to resemble its most radiant and dynamic city. The rest of the world was electrified by a sense of optimism that Hong Kong was a glimpse into China's future, not that Hong Kong would grow into a reflection of China's past. In every decision, I will continue to proudly defend and protect the workers, families, and citizens of the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And you have been listening to President Trump there in the Rose Garden making a number of announcements. Carol, pulling funding from the WHO. That is something that he had talked about repeatedly, making that proclamation. Also making some proclamations and some decisions related directly to China, leveling some very strong accusations against China, not just around the virus, but around a number of other issues. And as we had been reporting, leveling some sanctions related to protecting financial interests, especially as it relates to Hong Kong.
Yeah, well, and this has to do, going back to their special status, trading status that certainly Hong Kong enjoys because of its respect for the rule of law. And if those things start to change, it becomes a very different entity for the United States to interact with. What's interesting, and I go back to our conversation that we had with White House correspondent Jordan Fabian, was this going to be a full-on news conference? Because there's so much going on in our country and our world right now. And so it was interesting to see whether or not he was going to take questions or whether or not it would be just a statement. Right. And essentially, that's what it was.
That's exactly what it was. Much more ahead here on Bloomberg, including a look at the economy and what we heard from Chair Jay Powell. This is Bloomberg.
This is WBBR New York, WDCH-FM Bowie, Baltimore, Washington, WJZ-FM HD2 Catonsville, WRCA Watertown, WBOS HD2 Brookline, Boston, WNBP Newburyport, KNEW Oakland, KOSF 103.7 FM HD2 San Francisco, and SiriusXM Satellite Radio Channel 119.
Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A reversal for the stock market as the president was speaking. The S&P has turned negative, did trade as low as just about 3,001, but right now moving straight up. S&P higher by 8 points now at 3,038. That is a gain of 0.3%. The Dow now higher by 10 points, reversing earlier losses. NASDAQ now gaining 76 points, higher by 0.8%. So the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. Stocks did slump earlier in the session on the day's economic news, as well as anticipation of what the president may say about China and Hong Kong. 10-year up 14.30 seconds, looking at a yield right now of 0.64%. Gold up 0.7%, 17.31 the ounce, and crude rallying 4.7%. West Texas Intermediate crude 35.28 a barrel, up right now by $1.57. A Bloomberg exclusive earlier today. We sat down with Loretta Mester, president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. She talked about a number of topics, including the outlook for the U.S. economy.
In the third quarter and fourth quarter, we're going to see activity begin to emerge. I think some of the quarterly growth rates are going to overstate what it looks like really out in the field, because we're going to see from a base of very little activity some pickup in activity, and they're going to look like big growth rates, but we're still going to be below where we were at the start of the year in terms of both employment and output.
And one additional headline to pass along to you. President Trump says the U.S. will act to revoke Hong Kong's preferential treatment. Tensions between Twitter and President Trump soared after the social media platform warned users that the president broke its rules against violent speech, prompting critics to accuse the company of unfairly censoring one of its most prominent users. Twitter shares, they are lower today, down now by just about 2.1%. Again, recapping, equities now in the green with the S&P up 8, a gain there of 0.3%. The Dow up 0.1%, NASDAQ up 0.8. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. We're going to keep a close eye on the markets for the last hour of trading here. We did see, as you just heard from Charlie, stocks go down and then go up. So we're going to try and make sense of what the market heard and how they interpreted what the president said. Another important voice we heard from earlier in the day was that of Fed Chair Jay Powell speaking. He's been speaking a lot lately. Let's take a sample of some of the things that he highlighted.
We do have this precious grant of independence, and that really means that we need to stay in our lane and just do those things that Congress assigns us to do. The tools that we're using now are lending tools, not spending tools. So we don't have the ability to make grants of money to particular groups of people, no matter how directly they're affected. We crossed a lot of red lines that had not been crossed before, and I'm very comfortable that this is that situation in which you you do that, and then you figure it out afterward. A second wave would really undermine public confidence and might make for a longer, a significantly longer recovery and weaker recovery.
All right, and that was Fed Chair Jay Powell speaking earlier with Alan Blinder, of course, formerly of the Fed as well. They were doing a Princeton event virtually.
Did you hear what he said? He used your line. Lending, not spending.
I know, the T-shirts,
the World
right?
Tour, 2020 World Tour, lending, not spending. Feds, even some of the former Feds, Alan Blinder, as you said, coming in. Let's bring in one of our favorites, Yelena Shalecheva, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics, joining us on the phone from Long Island. All right, so you heard a little bit of the smorgasbord there from the Fed chair, Yelena. What's the most important thing you heard from Jay Powell?
Yes, hi. So I would say that the bits that you played basically suggest that the Fed will not stop, will not hesitate to do whatever it takes to support economic growth. And they would like to be very transparent about what they're doing and why they're doing it. So to me also, what was very interesting in today's remarks was a confirmation that lending facilities will be key front and center of the Fed's actions going forward, and the key area for the expansion in the balance sheet. Since the Fed is actually tapering QE purchases, they will focus more and more on this lending programs going forward in coming months. So he highlighted the multifaceted nature of engaging in the extraordinary powers under the so-called 13.3 section of the Federal Reserve Act, unusual and exigent circumstances. Not only were they able to backstop financial markets without even starting to lend under these new programs, but also they will try to address the key issue of this economic crisis, the job losses, by lending to different sized businesses, small and medium sized businesses, and try to tailor these lending programs towards their needs.
Yeah, and I was listening to some of what he said out. I mean, you're talking about pretty small amounts of money, but for a small business, that's a game changer. I'm still kind of blown away that here we are in week 11, and then this money is just starting to go out. And I do want to point out, about a half an hour, we did get ahead that the Fed's slowing the pace of Treasury buying to $4.5 billion a day from $5 billion. So they're continuing to slow down and back off of that. But I do worry, Yelena, you watch the economy, you watch big businesses, small businesses. I do wonder about how many small businesses are not going to make it through because the money's just coming too late.
Well, some of them will not. And, we will see some data on that front in the releases that we will get next week. So one of them, obviously, is the payrolls report that we're going to get on Friday. But before we get that, we will also receive the data from ADP on, and ADP actually splits private payrolls, not only by industry, but also by the size of companies. So that will be an interesting metric to assess how different businesses of different sizes are faring this crisis. So that is coming out on Wednesday. But in terms of bigger payrolls report from BLS that we are going to get on Friday, we will get a smaller decline, but that's not a small one by historical standards. So following a 20 million decline in jobs in April, we will probably get something closer to 7 to 8 million job losses reported for the month of May. So, and we will also see a spike in the unemployment rate. And our expectations are for 20% unemployment rate in the month of May. This is actually very close to the peak levels that we observed during the Great Depression. One green shoot I should offer probably is jobless claims. So we already saw yesterday in the weekly claims report that continuing claims ticked down a little bit. So that is a positive sign. This is one of the very few nascent signs of recovery as states are starting to reopen. But we actually need to see that continue for several weeks to actually confirm that the labor market is on the mend. So I would say that we should continue to watch claims as closely as we were during those several past weeks. And also one interesting data that I would like to point out next week will be auto sales. We will probably see a rebound in auto sales, and that's going to be another very first initial green shoot. But that is probably not going to be a very strong one. But this will allow us to assess how much demand was lost due to the shutdowns and how much demand will be lost during the loss of personal income.
And we recently caught up with the head of Porsche North America, and he talked about how a lot of their dealerships are reopening or have reopened back in the U.S. So certainly that should match up with some of that data points, or we'll see how it plays out. All right, let's get back to World and National News headlines. Yelena, thank you. Right now, let's toss it over to Bob Moon.
And thank you very much. President Trump says the U.S. will act to revoke Hong Kong's preferential treatment. He says China unilaterally imposed control over Hong Kong's security, and Trump says he's directed his administration to eliminate policies that give Hong Kong special treatment, including extradition treaties and export controls. Trump says investment firms should not expose clients to China's risk, and he says the U.S. will sanction Chinese officials involved in smothering Hong Kong's autonomy. At the same time, the president put the blame for the COVID-19 pandemic squarely on China.
Why is it that China shut off infected people from Wuhan to all other parts of China? It went nowhere else. It didn't go to Beijing. It went nowhere else. But they allowed them to freely travel throughout the world, including Europe and the United States. The death and destruction caused by this is incalculable. We must have answers, not only for us, but for the rest of the world.
The president also says the U.S. will terminate its relationship with the World Health Organization, which he is accused of being under Chinese control and failing to provide accurate information about the spread of the coronavirus. The Minneapolis police officer who was seen on video kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, a handcuffed black man who died in custody after pleading that he could not breathe, the police officer was arrested today and charged with murder. Global News 24 hours a day. I'm Bob Moon.
The markets. No, you can't just run screaming from the room.
A lot of economists are just throwing up their hands and saying, we don't know.
But you don't have to manage this alone.
What are you looking at to give you some sort of compass through this period?
Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
What is your early read as to the scope and scale of this plan?
Bloomberg Markets. Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesmaned the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
It's a stock market driver.
Now they're starting to see a little bit of panic from policymakers.
It's a global political force.
How will this epidemic reshape big tech and its relationship with Washington?
It's a virus.
This coronavirus is a global pandemic.
Is there a safe haven?
And the facts matter.
The situation is so bad because of the virus that is simply unavoidable.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia, local 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested? This is an important update from the government about coronavirus. We all need to stay alert so we can control the virus and reduce the risk of infection. Staying alert means you must stay at home as much as possible. Work from home if you can. Limit contact with others. Keep your distance if you go out. And wash your hands regularly. Do not leave home if you or anyone in your household has symptoms. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
Neil. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to relive the glory of college
Balls over a man, into the end zone,
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay section to hear ESPN's complete coverage. 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be two champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be one team hold up the trophy.
10, to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Hi, this is Mike Tirico, introducing you to Sports Uncovered, the newest podcast series from the storytellers at NBC Sports that will shine a fresh light on the most unforgettable moments in sport.
The reason why I'm smiling, I might get in trouble for this.
Search Sports Uncovered to start listening today.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
It's in breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. 43 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Volatile final hour of trading right now. We've got the Dow lower, S&P higher, NASDAQ higher as well. Let's get all the details as we head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Big warm welcome. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. Like you said, U.S. stocks in a choppy session today.
as Trump stopped short of implementing economic restrictions against China. Dow's currently down 23 points, was down 369 points. S&Ps are higher by 5. NASDAQ climbs by 71. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.64%. WTI crude futures are up 4%. Gold gains 10, and transports are little changed. Leaders in the Dow: Intel, Cisco, and Home Depot. Raytheon, Boeing, and American Express led to the downside. After earnings, Costco fell 1%. Salesforce dropped 4%. And in other news, Tencent is in talks to buy a Warner Music stake. Wrapping things up, Beyond Meat to partner with Pizza Hut and KFC in China. Shares spiked off that headline. Wrapping things up, live from the First Word Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, I thank you very much, Bill Maloney. Have a great weekend, and to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg-type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, Jason, one thing that's happening as a result of the pandemic is the pharma and biotech community, and companies, really.
And companies.
Yeah, have kicked into high gear big time, pivoting where they need to, just trying to figure out how to deal with this virus. This story is so cool, and it feeds into, I love genetics, and this story in Business Week is about a biotech startup that really aims to make use of humanity's genetic outliers. It's called Rare DNA, to really help deal with a lot of issues that are out there, but also COVID-related ones. Bloomberg Business Week feature writer and New York Times bestselling author Ashley Vance. He wrote this story on Variant Bio. We'll find out about that company in just a moment. Ashley, by the way, host of Hello World. He joins us on the phone from Palo Alto. Also here is Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber. He's on the phone from Brooklyn. This is a really cool story, Joel.
Yeah, anytime Ashley's raises his hand and wants to do something in sort of biotech or science with crazy people, you're always interested. But what really caught my eye was when he took to Twitter to start talking about the story, and it was just such a great simplification of it, which is don't we all want to be superheroes? Ashley, what are these guys working on?
Yeah, this is a crazy one. The company Variant Bio is essentially got people that are going all over the world to try to find very unique humans, usually kind of isolated indigenous populations where, one X-Men. Example we have... Yeah, X-Men, exactly. One example we have in the story is the Sherpa people in Nepal. So typically people that live at high altitudes, they adapt over time to have oxygen levels that are the same as the rest of us, whereas the Sherpas actually, they survive in what would be a hypoxic or oxygen-starved state for the rest of us, and they lead these healthy, active lifestyles. And so the thought is, you study their DNA, you find out what makes them special, and then you develop a drug or a therapy based on that. And so in the case of something like COVID, where people are suffering from hypoxia, maybe you have a therapy that helps alleviate a lot of those stresses. And so going around the world and finding all kinds of these superpowers and then developing drugs based off them.
So, Ashley, that's the ultimate science project in many ways. How can you get your arms around? How can we get our arms around the chances, the efficacy? What do you make of it? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's complicated, and with any drug discovery program, this is a multi-year process. But there's examples of where this has been done in the past. So there are mainstream cholesterol drugs, for example, that are based off of the genes of people of African descent who seem to have very low LDL or bad cholesterol levels. We know the science works. The weird thing is that nobody's tried this approach on quite this systemic, large-scale efforts. The biggest gene sequencing stuff that we all know about is 23andMe and Ancestry, and they're sort of sequencing tons of people with relatively similar DNA and then hoping to study this massive data and find interesting insights, whereas these guys are reading papers and studies about these very unique people and then going sort of straight to them where they know that there's something interesting there already. But it becomes a question of how long does it take to develop these things, and it's many years for sure.
And so, all right, Ashley, go ahead, Joel.
Well, that's I kind of just want to know, like, if they can pull this off, like, where does their version of their company, where do they go?
Yeah, I mean, this is, we're talking about them partnering with large pharmaceutical companies to actually get the drugs to market. And like on this journey, I should point out, I mean, there's huge questions around the ethics and morals of all this. One of the biggest reasons this hasn't been done before is that you have to find these people. You have to be careful about how you work with them, and then hopefully come up with some sort of compensation model where maybe they get subsidized or free versions of the drugs, they get the data based on this, and then maybe even like royalties off of a drug. And so the company is already operating in the Faroe Islands, in Pakistan, and New Zealand, and Nepal, and so they're over the next couple of years just going to expand out these locations and then get to the drug discovery work.
Hey, I do wonder, Ashley, too, that because of COVID-19, has it made them kind of step up their efforts?
Well, sort of, it's gone the opposite way, actually.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, like in Nepal, they were pretty far along, and the study in Nepal would be the one that's most applicable to COVID, and they were ready. They've already been there for months. They were ready to get all these deals signed, and now, the principals can't sort of travel to Nepal to do some of this work on the ground. And so I talked to a doctor there who's been working with Variant, and he's like, look, we thought we were going to have this all go in the summer, and now maybe it's like the end of this year or rolling into next year. So, this is a company that has to literally scour the earth and travel and do all this stuff, and so it's made it tricky.
All right, Ashley Vance, it's a great piece as always. Love your writing. Love catching up with you, and looking forward to catching up with you soon to talk SpaceX as well. That scrubbed launch we believe is rescheduled for this weekend, so eager to hear what comes out on the other side of that. Ashley Vance, feature writer, and as Carol pointed out, best-selling author, host of Hello World, joining us on the phone from Palo Alto. Our thanks to Joel Weber, the editor of the magazine.
This is just a reminder that there's still so much about the human body we do not understand and know, and I do think that medical treatment will be based more on how do you take the body and what's here already and just work with it to improve it. So really great story. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this Friday. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks have turned higher in the final hour. Traders are breathing easier after President Trump blasted China for its actions in Hong Kong, but stopped short of imposing draconian sanctions. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 35, the S&P 500 up 10, the Nasdaq is up 82. Consumer spending came crashing down in April as coronavirus lockdowns smothered the economy. The government says spending fell by a record 13.6%. Incomes were higher, but only because of federal stimulus payments. The end is near for Pier 1 Imports. The home goods retailer has won permission from a federal judge to liquidate its remaining stores. The closings will mean the loss of about 17,000 jobs nationwide. Fitbit shares are down more than 1%. Texas Attorney General reportedly is investigating Google's planned takeover of the company. Other states may also get involved. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
This Independence Day, it's a Boston Pops salute to our heroes, presented by Bloomberg and Eaton Vance. The Boston Pops 4th of July tradition continues with new music, paying tribute to the heroes of the current health crisis and honoring the memories of those we have lost. Plus, special guest artists and fireworks displays from years past. Watch and listen July 4th starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Bloomberg Television, Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. COVID-19.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone,
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, race to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
The NHL is always on the ice with these awesome hockey podcasts on TuneIn. Get your goal with the Spittin' Chicklets podcast.
Brian Yandel, Keith Yandel, thanks for coming on. What's going on?
Nothing much. Glad to be here. You guys got some nice digs here.
We heard you took Southwest 2-stop flight to get out here.
Yeah, well, just
carve up the ice with NHL at the rink.
The other day I wrote a story. Artemi Panarin, Semyon Varlamov, Sergei Bobrovsky, they all helped arrange for the purchase of N95 masks to benefit hospitals in their respective markets. This is another one of those positive stories you're seeing.
Or create your own power play with Locked On NHL.
All these teams invested future assets to take a run at the Stanley Cup right now. Like, all of those teams would have a real serious gripe, like trading these multiple first-round picks to make a run at a cup. You're right.
Discover these and more NHL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a podcast on TuneIn. For expert analysis straight from the WWE to Steve Austin's no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
To New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business.
I need a little music.
I know. It's already that time.
Right?
Excited that we're going to get our Friday dose of Dave Wilson. His chart of the day, his song of the day. It's all coming together.
His tie of the day. Oh, maybe he probably doesn't have a tie on. He's at home.
I am guessing he does not.
All right, we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get back to your top business stories. Another check on the trading day bouncing around, but we're back near our highs here, Charlie Pellet, but still a little change.
Absolutely right about that, but let me put bouncing around in perspective. Worst level of the day, we had the Dow down 368 points. Right now, we have got the Dow up by 1 point. We'll call that flat. S&P is up 9, a gain there of 0.3%. NASDAQ up 88, higher by 1%. 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Stocks erase losses, trading little changed after President Trump stopped short of implementing draconian economic restrictions against China, even as he blasted the country for its actions on the pandemic and in Hong Kong. So again, the S&P up by 10. We have got the 10-year up 13.30 with a yield of 0.64%. Gold up 0.8%, 17.31 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude rallying 3.4% now at 34.86 a barrel, but during the session did trade above $35. Speaking of oil, Occidental Petroleum cutting its quarterly dividend by 91% to cope with the pandemic-driven collapse in energy demand that has strained the oil explorer's ability to shoulder its debt. That dividend going down to 1 cent. 1 penny have been 11 cents. As for Occidental Petroleum shares, they're down 3.6%. Among some of the other big names in the energy industry, ExxonMobil shares up 1.1%. BP is down 0.4%. EOG Resources down 1.6%. Pioneer Natural Resources lower now by 1.2%. It is 3:33 on Wall Street. That means it's time for the Small Business Report. And now here's John Tucker.
For nearly 60 years, skaters and hockey players had made their way to Ocean Ice Palace and its pro shop in Brick, New Jersey. The summer months are actually some of their busiest, but manager and part owner Andrew Barton had to close the doors as part of the pandemic-related shutdowns. So, Andrew, nobody's skating right now.
Yes, sir. So the ice is completely closed. The state ordered that. The shop itself, we work hard to do everything we can do online, selling that space. I got my team there actually working now to try to upload to the new Facebook feature where you can use the store. Curbside pickup is there. We've done a few things here and there, but realistically, nobody's skating. And if you're not skating, you don't need hockey sticks. You don't need hockey skates.
Well, how long can you sustain this?
I wish I knew the answer to that. You know, I've been kind of relying on our local elected officials to give me some information. And, you know, I think it's easy to criticize, and I don't mean in that manner, but I would love to see a solid timeline. You know, we kind of decided that for us to take the ice out is equivalent to about a month's worth of carrying costs.
What's the overhead for maintaining ice?
Just to maintain the ice, you know, don't include any labor or anything of that nature. We run electric equipment back there. We're looking at probably $12,000 to $15,000 monthly just for utilities. So we do want to make sure we stay in a position where we're ready to go if we're allowed to go.
Yeah, Andrew Barton at the Ocean Ice Palace in Brick, New Jersey. That's your Bloomberg Small Business Report.
And we thank you very much, John Tucker. And again, recapping here, equities higher with the S&P up 5, gain of 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pelleton, thank you so much. Catch up with you later. In the meantime, this is Bloomberg.
A little Clapton. Hello? Yeah.
Jane Allman.
Yeah.
Etc.
Yeah.
So many.
So great.
Derek and the Dominoes.
Yeah, totally, right? Oh my God, so many bands. That's really sweet.
You know, I have to say,
that's my weekend gift. Thank you, Dave Wilson.
Yeah, it's a nice one. Dave, I heard I think there's a great cover of that, or I have heard a cover of that from Tedeschi Trucks.
Who also plays with Clapton all the time.
Yeah, which is, I saw them at Red Rocks, Quick Flex.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah, it was
incredible.
They are
so incredible.
Drive-By Truckers opened and Tedeschi Trucks, Red Rocks, one of the best shows I've ever seen. Incredible. Anyway, Dave Wilson, what a weekend gift.
I love that couple. They're just so cool. My next
Super
life,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
It's kind of what
you want to be, Susan Tedeschi?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
All right, Dave Wilson, we know you've got a chart. We'll get there.
Well, you don't have to learn to play guitar to figure out this one. Let's put it that way. It's all about, growth stocks. I mean, you look at the relationship between growth and value indexes. You can pick the S&P 500. If you want a broader look, you can pick the Russell 1000. And you're seeing ratios between the two indicators back to where they were in 2000, when, of course, you had that internet-driven bull market of the 1990s peaking. So here we are again. Now the question is, what about valuation? And it's a question that the folks at Bank of America, specifically analysts Steven Suttmeyer and Jordan Young, tackled in their latest research, looking at the price-earnings ratios for the Russell 1000 growth and value indexes, and just doing a simple, subtraction to produce a spread between the two. And when you do that, you find out, sure, the growth stocks are more expensive, but nowhere near as expensive in relative terms as they were back 20 years ago when stocks were peaking. So basically, their take is that what we saw this week with the value stocks kind of getting a bit of a rebound in relative terms, maybe it doesn't last for long because, there's certainly enough room in terms of valuation for growth stocks to reassert themselves. Now, I'll just point out, too, that, you could run the same analysis with ratios, and Michael Darda at MCAM Partners actually did that in a report out yesterday, and you come to the same results. So it really doesn't matter whether you're doing division or subtraction, you end up in the same place with growth stocks more expensive, but nowhere near as expensive as they were at the height of the market in 2000.
So in other words, Dave, don't give up on growth stocks.
That's kind of the message here, Carol. And if you want to know more, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
What you doing this weekend, Dave Wilson?
That's a good question. I haven't thought that far ahead.
So you're just going to wing it, right? Whatever comes to you?
Kind of.
Okay.
He's a free spirit, Dave.
Chillax.
Wow.
What are you doing, Carol Masser? Chillaxing? Gardening?
Believe it or not, we have a bunch of virtual college tours lined up for tomorrow. And I think it's supposed to rain, so I'm okay. We wanted to do some painting outside, so maybe that'll be Sunday. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Jason?
I don't know. Hanging around. Maybe listen to some music.
Maybe listen to your podcast. You've got a great podcast.
I do. Yeah, it is a big podcast. Rich Paul, one of the most prominent agents in basketball and beyond.
Who does he represent?
A guy named LeBron James, Anthony Davis.
Right.
Yeah, a few people you've heard of. Number 2 and number 3 picks in this year's NFL draft, by the way, expanding into the NFL. Great sort of philosophical conversation with him, actually. We'll hear a little bit about it later on in the show. Yeah. How he built his business.
Good stuff.
Some stuff I'll tell you about later. Yeah.
All right. Well, our thanks to Dave Wilson. He's going to be back later on with his stock of the day. Right now, though, back to World and National News headlines and back to Bob Moon.
Carol, President Trump stuck to the script on China today, formally rolling out all of the proposals that have been aired in the media this week, from limiting visas to Chinese citizens, reviewing the U.S. listings of Chinese companies, and retracting, Hong Kong's special trade status. There's also the possibility of sanctions on officials involved in, as he called it, smothering Hong Kong's freedom.
China's latest incursion, along with other recent developments that degraded the territory's freedoms, makes clear that Hong Kong is no longer sufficiently autonomous to warrant the special treatment that we have afforded the territory since the handover.
The police officer who was seen on video kneeling on the neck of George Floyd has been arrested. From Rodney King to George Floyd, connecting dot after dot, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo today lamented that the same situation keeps happening again and again and again.
And I think all well-meaning Americans stand with the protesters. Enough is enough. How many times do you have to see the same lesson replayed before you do something?
Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman said today that Derek Chauvin was charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter in the death of George Floyd. Global News 24 hours a day, on air, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon N.A. Member FDIC.
Jenny Liss, Jewish communal leader and philanthropist, talks about why she chose the Jewish Communal Fund for her family's charitable giving.
For a lot of people, it would be the convenience factor. I don't have to track anything.
If charitable giving is an important part of your life, JCF can help you organize your philanthropy with our donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a minimum tax-deductible contribution of $5,000. Make grants to your favorite charities, and JCF handles all the administration and reporting.
At the year end, our board awards community grants from fees and endowment income to UJ's annual campaign. We also make gifts to specific organizations, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, the hungry. The fact that we come together as a community at the end of the year to build community, that's what makes us different.
Get better at giving back. To find out more about JCF's impact, visit jcfny.org and download the Giving Report. JCF, we have a gift for giving.
In-depth analysis.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Enter Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow and NASDAQ, actually the S&P and NASDAQ, they're both higher. We've got the Dow lower right now. Stocks erasing losses, trading mostly higher after President Trump stopped short of implementing draconian economic restrictions against China, even as he blasted the country for its actions on the pandemic, as well as Hong Kong. S&P up 7 now. That's a gain of about 0.3%. The Dow, which had been down 368 points, now looking at a loss of 46, down 0.2. So a big recovery for the Dow. NASDAQ holding on to a gain now, up by 100 points. That is up by 1.1%. And should point out that in the year-to-date column, NASDAQ on the year up now by 5.5%. 10-year yield 0.64%. We've got gold up 0.8%, $17.32 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude was trading above $35. Right now, it is at $34.97. WTI up today by 3.7%. So again, recapping here, the Dow lower, S&P up 8. That is a gain of 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the drive to the close. And you know, Jason, as Charlie mentioned earlier, man, we have seen tremendous swings in today's trade alone. He mentioned the Dow at its low was down about 369 points. At its highs was up about 82 points. And right now we're little change. So it's really been a very volatile day. Let's talk about it. Our next guest has been managing money for over 4 decades. Barry James is with us, portfolio manager at the Ohio-based James Investment Research, and he joins us on the phone from Ohio. Barry, how's life in Ohio right now?
Well, we're coming back to life. Let me put it that way. Where I am in the Dayton area wasn't hit very hard, and it seems that folks are doing what they're supposed to do here, and I'm getting my crew back into our offices now as well. So it seems to be going forward.
And so what is that like? I mean, to running a business, because I think so many times we talk to investors like yourself, Barry, and, we talk macro and we talk markets and we talk stocks, and we're going to do all of those things. But, you're also running a business. You have to think about your people, and that's a very, as they say, important asset, maybe your most important asset. I do wonder what sort of process you go through of sort of getting back to it.
Well, what we're doing is gradual. Most of the folks can work at home and have been working at home, and so what we've got is over the next month, we'll be staggering people in, and then going to more of a full complement here in the office. But a lot of folks can work from home, and if anybody's uncomfortable, they can come in.
Right. Yeah, and I was going to say probably we'll choose to continue doing that for either part of the time or most of the time, whatever that is. It's interesting how we've all adjusted so dramatically. Well, speaking of adjustments, how have you adjusted your investments in this market? I think a lot of people, looking at their 401ks and their IRAs, have seen a really remarkable bounce back over the past few months. We're going to end this week in the green. What's your strategy here?
Well, they're absolutely right. It has been kind of on the retail side that have really been supporting this and pushing it up, because institutional guys like me haven't been quite so positive. We're still holding some cash back. We see things as kind of BC-AD, the time thing. BC is before coronavirus and AD is after the disease. And so as we look at this right now, it's kind of like a character in the Truman Show. Everything's happy and good, and yet behind things are a little ominous. And I don't think that's quite realized yet, just how bad earnings are going to be. Some expectations are down 42% for for this quarter. And the consumers aren't spending. They've just, I still have the same money in my wallet from about a month and a half ago. So that's not good for the economy. So those things, I think, will start to seep into people's mindsets. And this rally may wind up taking a little bit of a breather. And so that's what we're looking for, is that breather, and then possibly do some buying then, because there is some built-up demand, I think, that will be coming out over the next couple quarters.
It's so funny, just as you said that, we were thinking, and our producer Paul Brennan thinking the same thing, when we talked with Jen Rosenthal of Tribeca, talking about productions and filming and content, but that whole idea of AC and BC, before Corona and after Corona, like our world will be split in those ways. And I do feel like, Barry, because we are seeing more reopening, New York City, being much more formal and specific about, looking now with putting out a date about the possibility of opening up, with phase 1. So you do feel like things are getting back to quote unquote normal. So tell me about how you look at the market. Have we bottomed out? Do we stay here? Do we start to climb as new data points start to maybe hopefully reflect the other side, AC, after Corona?
Well, a lot of people have a fear of missing out. I think that's what's driving the market now, because any news is good news, whether it's slapping China on the hand or troubles in the middle part of our country. The market just seems to ignore it. So there is definitely that upward pull for the moment. But as we look at it, there's valuations are actually right back to where they were before this decline, and in some cases even higher than they've been, like all the way back to 2000. So you've got that. You've got the poor earnings scenario that we have unfolding, and I view this more as a broken leg. I had one after parachuting accident in my youth, and it takes a while to repair. And I think that's what's happened. The economy's had a break, and it's going to take a little while for this to come back.
Talk to us a little bit about Costco. We heard their earnings. It is obviously a popular brand. I live in the New York suburbs, and we got a couple within a few miles of us. And certainly at the beginning of the pandemic, there were literal, lines and lines of cars and folks lining up to get in. But how has that name, how has it performed for you, and what do you think about it going forward?
Well, it's done well for us in this environment, and it's a very solid company. It's kind of best in class in terms of the retailer. It's had some extra costs. I think that came out today in the news with the whole coronavirus things in terms of sanitation and wages and the like. But they've really made a huge dent. I think in the e-commerce area, big jump, over 60% jump, and that'll probably be something that carries over for quite some time. So hold up well, we expect, regardless of what happens, if we have a second wave or not. And we see it as a company that has what it takes to get through this time.
Hey, just got about 20, 30 seconds here. Verizon's another one. We've talked several times with Hans Vestberg, the CEO of the company. What is it, just quickly, Barry, that you like about Verizon?
Well, a good payout.
The dividend.
4.3 dividend and a rock-solid balance sheet. It's not that correlated. The price, the movements aren't that correlated with the stock market overall. It's very, very sticky business. It's a consumer staple almost. You could call it that. And this 5G is going to be good for them for quite some time, and it should really start to monetize in 2021.
All right, Barry James, good to get some time with you. Good luck with the great reopening as we all face that down. Portfolio manager for James Investment Research joining us on the phone from the Dayton area, Carol. And it looks like if things hold on, we're going to be up for the day, and we know we're going to be up for the week across all the major indices.
And Vince Ignorello was talking about, us moving up here and maybe finishing by the in the green, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And we've seen a rally for the week overall. Huh? I hear the ice clinking for Vince. All right, stick around, folks. We've got the closing bell for you in just a moment, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Business is like a...
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA Show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in a front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I jumped high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn. Be part of the sports conversation with Sports Talk Radio on TuneIn. Join the discussion around your favorite local teams with sports stations broadcasting in your
The
area.
game will be 185 to 183, and somebody wins, whatever. Football, it's either full go or it's not. You got it's thud. I can practice what they call
Follow
thud.
national storylines and debates with ESPN Radio.
Does the NBA have a hiring problem when it comes to front office jobs in the leagues and a minority hiring issue? Stephen A. chimed in on that today on First Take.
It also resonates with me, Max. You can appreciate this position. One of the candidates was Brian Colangelo. We know what happened. I like Brian, but we know.
And hear what's happening worldwide with international channels like Talk Sport.
Seems as I'm sort of doing my life in reverse at the moment. I was on cricket tours when I was 20 years old, and now I'm 31. I'm out sat at home injured playing PlayStation. So it's a tournament basically where you create your own character.
In your backyard and around the globe. Keep your finger on the pulse of the sports world with TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. There you have it. Sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange as we ramp up trading on this Friday, May 29th, and it is on to the weekend and on to the trading month of June. Humberto Lima of Coca-Cola FEMSA Brazil, by the way, virtually ringing that closing bell. Stocks erase losses with the S&P 500 index picking up 14 points, a gain of 0.5%. NASDAQ surged 120 points, up 1.3%. The Dow swinging between gains and losses. It was a down day, though, dropping 17 points. Had been higher right into the close, a decline today of 0.1%. But at the worst level of the session, the Dow had been down 1.4%, had been down by about 368 points. So what about the overall mood of the market? Barry James is portfolio manager at James Investment Research. He was our guest moments ago, right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
A lot of people have a fear of missing out. I think that's what's driving the market now, because any news is good news. whether it's slapping China on the hand or troubles in the middle part of our country, the market just seems to ignore it. So there is definitely that upward pull for the moment.
And again, an upward pull for the S&P, up 14, up 0.5%. Your 10-year, the yield there 0.65%. Gold up 0.8%, 17.31 the ounce. Crude, big rally there, up 4.1%. 35 handle now on WTI, $35.10. After earnings, Dell Technologies surging 8.9% today. It reported quarterly revenue and profit that came in better than projected. Salesforce.com trimming its annual revenue and profit forecast. Salesforce shares, ticker CRM, down 3.5%. Also this morning, we did hear from Big Lots, the closeout store. Big Lot shares up 5.6%. Occidental Petroleum slashing its dividend down from 11 cents to 1 penny a share. Occidental lower today by 5.1%. Again, recapping S&P ending the week and the day higher, up 14. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me.
I got a few moves I know you'll like.
Oh, come on, shake 'em, no stir.
Just move on up toward your destination.
I can make things move without touching them.
Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody, time for us to dig a little bit deeper into the equity trade. Of course, Charlie giving you those closing numbers. So here's big picture. S&P 500, kind of a split, 243 names in the index, higher today, 262 lower. Your outperformers among those 11 major industry groups. Information technology up 1.4%. Healthcare, a similar gain. Utilities were up almost 1%. Bottom of the pack, those are your outperformers. Bottom of the pack, real estate and financials. Financials were down about 1%. But Jason,
yes.
I took a look. I wanted to do some big picture here. So year to date, S&P is still down about 5.6%. Dow is still down 11%. NASDAQ is up almost 6% for the year. From the low, you've got both the S&P up 36% from that March 23rd low. Mm-hmm. NASDAQ is up 38% from that March low. And then from the high, which was about mid-February, February 19th on the S&P, we're still down about 10%. And then on the Dow and the NASDAQ from those February highs, we're down about 14% on the Dow, and we're down about 3% on the NASDAQ. So just a little perspective that we've had quite a dramatic bounce back. We're still not up at those high levels, but we're not far from it, certainly. Not when you look at something like the NASDAQ.
Which is remarkable. I mean, I still think much will be written and talked about over the coming weeks, months, and probably years about the growing disconnect, it feels like sometimes, between the real economy and the market, for sure. Let's talk about a few names that caught our attention in the trade today. One, because it's kind of fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Cody, I think you understand maybe what was driving the stock today. Kylie Jenner, not a billionaire.
I got to tell you, this story, man, we've been passing around. Thank you, Charlie Vollmer, who runs our technical operations here at Bloomberg Radio. And he sent around this story. It was in Forbes, and it says she's no longer a billionaire. You know, and we know she sold, what was it, earlier this year, she sold half of her cosmetics company to Coty.
To Coty, right.
Right?
And the issue apparently that's catching investors, just to tie a bow on it, is that this Forbes article in part pointed out that Coty probably paid a lot, and maybe more than they should have for that stake in Kylie Jenner. So it's a volatile stock. We've talked about it a number of times here. Another poor performer is Nordstrom, JWN. They reported earnings, and that stock disappointing investors, or those numbers disappointing investors, and investors selling off. That was down about 11%.
Right. We got that after the close yesterday. As we did Costco, we just talked about Costco with Barry James, and we did see a little bit of disappointment over some of the results there. That stock was down just a hair. I mean, at its lows was down about 2%, but, you know, kind of following the overall market volatility that we saw on this Friday, ending the day just down about 1/3% at 308.47. And the stock, it's up almost 5% so far here in 2020. And as Barry said, you know, they certainly look well positioned, going forward, certainly when it comes to the retail environment, and embracing more of the digital. And everything that we have heard from so many of our conversations, that if you did not have a digital strategy before the virus, you probably do now, and you should have by now, because more people will be doing things digitally.
One of my favorite trades today was the pizza trade. Domino's Pizza and Papa John's both up. That is because North Coast, an analyst there named Jim Sanderson, he said, quote, going forward, we believe consumers will remain wary of dine-in options, which will pressure independent pizzerias, which depend on an average of 1/3 of sales from dine-in traffic. So order in. Domino's Pizza delivers. There you go.
It's pizza night today here at the Mass Restaurant. Although we might be making homemade ones. I'm waiting to hear if they're making dough downstairs.
We made some nice dough yesterday. Actually, Henry did the whole thing, soup to nuts. Really good. Mellow mushroom, for those listening in the Southeast, we make the mellow mushroom dough. It is so
What
good.
is that?
It's got molasses in it. Mellow mushroom is this amazing chain down in the South. You should check it out. You would love it.
Okay, I guess.
Hey, guys, let's look at the VIX.
I like my crust nice and thin with a little bit of coal on it.
Then
Those
maybe
coal oven
it's not so much. Yeah.
Okay.
You're so fussy. Anyway, did I say that out loud? Oop. All right. The VIX down about 4.5%, closing at 27.30. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson. Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson. Dave Wilson back with his stock of the day. Very familiar name for many. Williams-Sonoma. Ticker is WSM, and we saw some big moves here today.
Absolutely. You know, it's the place to go if you're willing to spend $100 for Le Creuset Skinny Grill featured on its website, or maybe $600 for an espresso machine on sale. And if housewares aren't your speed, maybe the home furnishings at Pottery Barn or West Elm will catch your eye. Williams-Sonoma owns both retailers along with its namesake chain. Now, Williams-Sonoma, the company, was founded in 1956 and went public in 1983. The ticker is WSM, as you mentioned, Carol. The company shares peaked their record in August 2015. This year, they tumbled as much as 60% in a 2-month stretch. Now, Williams-Sonoma has rallied since then. Today, it reached the highest price since August 2015 as fiscal first quarter results went over well. Company-wide sales rose 2.6%. Locations open more than a year. Analysts expected a drop of 11.4% on average, according to a consensus metrics survey. And revenue and profit were well above the average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. Williams-Sonoma's results showed consumers who had to stay home because of the coronavirus were willing to spend. Hey, they sent the shares to a gain of almost 14%.
Yeah, that's a big bump, man.
It is. All these stay-at-home chefs, I guess you could say.
I'm looking
to upgrade the kitchens.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, right.
And maybe a few other rooms while they're at it.
That's right, right? Tapping into their other
Yeah,
properties.
you guys are making your own pizza. Boom.
I know.
Master household.
I know. Boom.
You guys have some Le Creuset. I guarantee it. You do.
Not saying anything.
Yeah, you do.
Anyway.
You will neither confirm nor deny the presence of Le Creuset. We have a lot of Le Creuset. It's great for baking and cooking. I'm just going to say it. All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Have an awesome weekend. Let's get to Bob Moon now. He's got world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, they call that dead air. Anyway, with lightning speed, prosecutors in Minnesota have announced charges against a fired Minneapolis police officer accused of kneeling on the neck of George Floyd at length during his arrest. It happened on Monday night, and Hennepin County Attorney Michael Freeman says Derek Chauvin was charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter inside of 4 days.
A horrible, horrific, terrible thing that we've all seen over and over again. We have the officer's body-worn camera. We have statements from some witnesses. We have a preliminary report from the medical examiner. We have discussions with an expert.
President Trump's tweeted warning amid unrest in Minneapolis that when the looting starts, the shooting starts, echoes the language of a Miami police chief in 1967 who made clear his distaste for civil rights activists and his belief that violent protests should be met with deadly force. Well, now Trump is claiming he was tweeting against looting that he says brings violence. after Twitter obscured his initial tweet and tagged it with a violation of its terms. President Trump intensified his confrontation with China, vowing to punish the country for the coronavirus pandemic and steps to curb Hong Kong's autonomy by ending the territory's special trade status with the U.S. and denying visas to Chinese officials. He cited a litany of grievances against the company. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
Why can't you just go to some remote island and wait till all this is over?
The range of outcomes is so wide.
Because it's your job.
What do you think some of the structural changes might result?
Fortunately, it's our job too.
How's the value done in this market?
Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
It's very hard to make a forecast.
Bloomberg Markets.
This could be a lower for longer type of hit.
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
COVID-19. On days when it seems there are nothing but questions.
What about the pandemic emergency purchase program in Europe?
What's the medical side of this?
We try to ask good ones.
How long until we have an answer on what drugs can help us fight this pandemic?
How do you think this has the potential to rattle markets?
Does that mean we should shut down?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
It's a rather controversial question being asked.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
If knowledge is power,
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/working safely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
TSB believe in people helping people. That's why they've created TSB Smart Agent, a new secure way for TSB to answer your personal and business banking questions online. Find out more at tsb.co.uk. Automated service available 24/7. TSB partners available 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday to Friday.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Airbags to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunningham to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Second monthly advance for the U.S. stock market. It was an up week with the S&P climbing 3%. The Dow by comparison this week up 3.7%. NASDAQ on the week up by 1.8%. Today, we had the S&P pick up 14 points, higher by 0.5%. The Dow fell 17, dropping 0.1%. NASDAQ up 120 points today. That was a gain of 1.3%. 10-year up 12.30 seconds with a yield of 0.64%. Gold up 0.8%, 17.32 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude rallying 5% today. WTI now at $35.33 a barrel. Stocks erase losses after President Trump stopped short of implementing draconian economic restrictions against China, even as he blasted that country for its actions on the pandemic and in Hong Kong. Recapping, S&P up 14 today, up 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, as we talk about reopening across the country, we know it is, as we've been saying, Carol, a bit of a checkerboard. So we want to talk to people who have a wide portfolio. Well, this fits the bill for sure. Jim Holthauser joins us. He's the CEO of Focus Brands. Joining us on the phone from Memphis, Tennessee, 7,000 restaurants across the country. Some names you know: Auntie Anne's, Moe's Southwest Grill, Jamba, Cinnabon. There's so many of these things that I want right now.
Auntie Anne's. How could you leave that out?
I said Auntie Anne's.
Did you? Oh, sorry.
That's the first thing I said.
I wasn't listening to you then.
Good Lord, you're thinking about Auntie Anne's. All right, Jim, really nice to have you here on the program. So, first of all, tell us what it's like down in Memphis.
Well, we're I would say it's a little quiet. Depends on where you go, what kind of restaurants you go to, but traffic's lighter. You go to the malls, traffic is extremely light. But on the other hand, you can drive by other kinds of restaurants, and the drive-thrus are full. So I think checkerboard was the perfect way you described it a second ago.
And so what are you saying? Are you picking up on any sort of general trends as you talk to the folks that you work with, the restaurant owners, and are there certain pockets of the country that are seeing better traffic or different sorts of traffic than maybe we saw a month or two ago?
No, I'll tell you, the differences really aren't explained by geography. I mean, the pandemic, and in fact, we have restaurants in 60 countries too, and you largely see the same trends every place. Where you see the differences really is in the type of restaurants. So the restaurants that were really most severely impacted were those in malls, and simply because malls closed, right? And even if you want to keep your restaurant open and there's no traffic, well, you really can't. It doesn't make much sense. On the other hand, restaurants that were kind of freestanding with drive-thrus, they tended to do pretty well. And so I can give you an example. One of our brands is Slotsky's. It's a sandwich brand.
Yep.
And it's I think 90% of the stores were open through the entire pandemic, and their sales are roughly 90% of what they were doing pre-pandemic. So it just really depends on the kind of location, really more than anything else.
So, Jim, how does your world change then going forward? Obviously, as things reopen, those that were impacted and shut down because they were in malls or what have you, business starts to come back. But I do wonder, what are your expectations for that business, and then what are the precautionary steps that you need to now put in place to protect employees as well as customers?
Yeah, as you know, it's a little bit like the wild west right now, because we're reopening dining rooms. So most of our freestanding restaurants stayed open. They offered curb service, and so they were able to keep the operations going. Obviously, as malls begin to reopen, we're working with the restaurants, and it's almost like starting over, right? You've got to throw all your product out, and new has to be ordered, and people have to be retrained, and it's almost like starting a business from scratch again. So you can imagine that magnitude, because there are 2,000 Auntie Anne's in malls around the world, right?
One thing I just want to ask you though, how does it complicate, because it's franchises, right? So how does that complicate, making sure that the standards are going to be all the same from franchise to franchise? Because one mistake at one franchise impacts potentially the whole brand.
Yeah, that's right. Well, but again, this is no different than franchising was pre-pandemic, right? You have
true.
You have training. You have you have your all your checks and balances that any good franchise company will have, right? Our restaurants are inspected. Our people are on site, for training and follow-up inspections, and so that's still in place. But to get back to your question, what's really complicated things is obviously a lot of the precautionary steps we have to take to keep our associates and our customers safe. So today when you walk into the restaurants, there's a sheet of plexiglass separating you from the person taking your order. Right, everybody's wearing masks. Everybody's wearing gloves. There's hand washing between every time you change gloves. Starting today, we made an announcement that in every location in this country, we will now require temperature taking before shifts start. So if you're not feeling well and you've got you start your shift and you've got a temperature, we have to send you home.
Yeah.
So in some cases that's dictated by the jurisdiction, but just out of an abundance of caution, we're going to require that at every one of our restaurants in the U.S.
But there is a risk, right? Because you realize, there are people who we know can have the virus, but they're not showing any, be asymptomatic. So we know that there will be some risks, right? And that's just kind of a given.
Yeah, and that's why that's what you do with that's why you're trying to separate and social distance, and you're absolutely right. There is no foolproof system at this point, right? You can take every step that we can imagine, and we are. But at the end of the day, I mean, every business is in exactly the same spot, right? There's nothing is foolproof at this point.
All right. We're going to continue our conversation with Jim Holthauser. He is the CEO of Focus Brands. And as you probably picked up on our conversation, you have interacted with Focus Brands at some point. If you've been to a mall, if you've been to an airport, or pretty much any other place. We're talking about Jamba, Moe's Southwest Grill, Auntie Annie's, Cinnabon, McAllister's Deli, Carvel, and Schlotsky's. We're going to continue that conversation with Jim. And it's a place that... a series of places that we've all been. Karen.
Do you know Auntie Anne's has DIY kits? We're going to have to talk to him about that, because it's just interesting how retail and restaurants and have pivoted to address the virus. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm thinking order some ice cream, order some pretzel kits.
Oh yeah. Carvel has been a big stop here. They've stayed open
the
here.
COVID-15, the COVID-19,
COVID-25, whatever it is.
Exactly.
All right, get back on that bike. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio. More Jim Holthauser next.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street closed out the week with a mostly higher session. Only the blue chips failed to advance. The Dow fell 18, the S&P 500 gained 15, the Nasdaq jumped 121. Florida officials reportedly have approved Disney's plans for reopening its Orlando theme parks, but things won't be the same. There will be no parades and no hugging Mickey and other characters. Restaurant capacities will be limited. Fed Chair Jerome Powell warns that a potential second wave of the coronavirus could undermine any economic recovery. He told an online event that the Fed is days away from launching its lending program for small and medium-sized businesses. Discover says it will begin allowing employees to return to its offices in the coming weeks, but it says they may continue to work remotely for the rest of the year. The credit card company says its offices will not exceed 50% occupancy for now. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. With COVID-19 so much...
This is an important update from the government about coronavirus symptoms and testing. If you have any one of the following symptoms, a high temperature, a new continuous cough, loss of taste or smell, you can now get tested. Do not leave home for any reason other than to get tested. Find out how to get a test and how long to isolate at nhs.uk/coronavirus. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slapshot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Connor to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, Former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man? What's up, my brother? Man, I'm good.
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Jim Holthauser. I wish that he could just virtually deliver us a Cinnabon, although then I wouldn't make it through the last hour of the show.
Or a Jamba, right? I'm just hungry.
Yeah, maybe a Jamba would be better.
Yeah, at this time of the day. All right, we're going to continue our conversation with him in just a moment. Let's get back, though, to your top business stories and some of the news after the close. Hey, Charlie Powell.
Well, hello there. Happy Friday to you both. We have got the Dow lower today, S&P, NASDAQ both advancing. Turned out to be an up month of May. It was also an up week as well. Holiday shortened trading week, but on the week, we did have stocks by advancing roughly 3% on the S&P. Relentless investor optimism over prospects for an economic recovery continued to overwhelm everything else in markets, pushing stocks higher on a day when President Trump escalated his war of words with China, while the president blasted the communist country for its actions on the pandemic. And in Hong Kong, traders took some solace in the absence of new draconian economic restrictions. Today we had the S&P up 14, up 0.5%, 3,044. The Dow down 17, down 0.1%. NASDAQ up 120, higher by 1.3%. 10-year yield 0.64%. Gold up 0.8%, 17.32 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 4.8%, 35.32 a barrel right now on WTI. Twitter shares dropped 2% today after it put up a rule violation notice on one of President Trump's most recent posts that included the phrase, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts." So might President Trump ever drop Twitter? We put that question to Dan Ives, an analyst with Wedbush Securities.
Oh, that would be a net negative. I mean, stock would sell off, because many would view it that one of the best things that ever happened to Twitter was President Trump. Relative to the platform and the engagement that you've seen there, it's all about engagement, and I think that's why I'd be shocked if he ultimately did that.
And again, Twitter shares down today by 2%. Citigroup plans to bring its workers back to the office when the COVID-19 pandemic ends, breaking with a raft of competitors planning to make remote operations permanent for many staff. Citigroup shares down today by 2.5%. Recapping equity markets higher for the most part, with the S&P up 14, up 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you very much. We want to get back to our conversation with Jim Holthauser. He's CEO of Focus Brands. You know their brands: Auntie Anne's, Jamba, Cinnabon, Carvel.
Jamba.
I know. Sorry, that was the New Jersey in me coming out. Jamba. Jim, my apologies. It's also Friday. He's with us on the phone from Memphis, Tennessee. Listen, I thought it was really cool how you guys were pivoting. I saw this with our local ice cream store, too. They created these boxes where you could create your own sundaes because they didn't want anybody in the store and you could just order the box. You guys did a DIY at-home pretzel kit. I'm curious about how that went over and what other things you did to pivot.
Right. So yeah, Auntie Anne's was very, very creative. As you know, you've got a very large percentage of that brand in malls, and so customers couldn't come to us. So we found ways of taking our product to customers. And so, when you think about when people were quarantined, and especially those with kids, they needed activities, and so we created basically a kit where we provided the raw ingredients, and your kids could make their own Auntie Anne's pretzels at home. So that worked pretty well. Part of the biggest shift that we saw in consumer behavior really had to do with the switch between lunch and dinner. So typically in a QSR, quick service restaurant, 75% of your revenue is going to come during the lunch hour. About 25% will come at night. And so with people not in offices anymore, people staying at home, that trend completely flip-flopped. And all of a sudden, customers weren't buying just a single serve, for lunch anymore. They were looking for meal solutions for entire families. So we pivoted very quickly, and you changed the menu up. So all of a sudden, when you came into a McAllister's, you could not only buy a salad for yourself, you could buy meat by the pound, cheese by the pound, fixings for 4, 5, 6 people, however many you need to feed. Moe's pivoted by creating taco kits. We created something called the Moe's Market, but basically allowed you to feed many people at one time. So I would say there was a lot of menu innovation, and one thing that surprised me in terms of how fast it happened. Drive-throughs became absolutely essential. So if your restaurants were closed, people couldn't get to you. So if you were in the middle of a strip center, everything around you was closed, and so what started to happen is we enabled restaurants to begin creating temporary drive-thrus. So you could get orange cones from Lowe's, and we showed you where to buy a tent from Amazon.com. We created the signage for it, and so there was all these makeshift drive-thrus that started popping up at our restaurants all over the place. And so not only did I find the innovation was really cool, but I was just so surprised and just a little bit proud in terms of how fast it happened.
So, Jim, it's interesting to talk to you and the breadth of your business, but also the breadth of your career. You worked at Hilton for a long time, and I do wonder, as you think broadly about the hospitality industry writ large, food, beverage, and hotels and travel and all that, what's your take on the biggest changes we can expect on the other side of this? I know a lot of it's going to be dictated by human behavior, and we certainly know that is unpredictable. But I do wonder, given all the inputs that you have, what do you think is the most meaningful change ahead?
In my entire career, clean has been a table stake item. So if you wanted to be in the hotel business, you want to be in the restaurant business, right? You had to be clean.
Yeah.
And now clean, I think, will become a differentiator in the future, and it's going to be absolutely critical whether you're in the airline industry, the hotel business, QSR business, retail. Your job now is to convince customers that you're clean and you're safe. And I think what once was a table stake item will now become a point of differentiation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Somebody was talking about, I guess, going back to, was it the 1920 or in the 20s, the pandemic and the health outbreak, and how they said sanitation, better standards came out of that. And you do wonder, if this whole idea of clean, and how the standards we've got out there, Jim, kind of just take a whole leg up because of the virus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, my guess is a lot of the practices you're seeing, whether it's the super frequent hand washing. I mean, again, that was happening to a degree before. Ventilation systems are being changed out with more frequency. Because of this, it's just a whole litany of changes that I think are probably here to stay.
Interesting. All right. Well, good to catch up with you, and hope to talk to you on the other side of this, because it sounds like the changes you made will, in many ways, impact how a lot of people think going forward, just based purely on the breadth of your holdings. Jim Holthauser is the CEO of Focus Brands. They've got nearly 7,000 restaurants across the country. Auntie Anne's, I said Auntie Anne's, Carol, don't worry. Cinnabon, McAllister's Deli, Carvel, Schlotzsky's, Moe's Southwest Grill, and Jamba.
Yeah, I'm hungry. That's all I'm going to say. All right, let's get back to World and National News headlines. Back on over to Bob Moon. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. Gone were the glowing words for China's president, as President Trump replaced them with a torrent of anti-Chinese criticism today. He announced plans ranging from limiting visas to Chinese citizens to reviewing the U.S. stock listings of Chinese companies and retracting Hong Kong's special trade status. He also put the blame for the COVID-19 pandemic squarely on China.
Why is it that China shut off infected people from Wuhan to all other parts of China? It went nowhere else. It didn't go to Beijing. It went nowhere else. But they allowed them to freely travel throughout the world, including Europe and the United States. The death and destruction caused by this is incalculable. We must have answers, not only for us, but for the rest of the world.
And President Trump also said the U.S. will terminate its relationship with the World Health Organization, which he has accused of being under Chinese control and failing to provide accurate information about the spread of coronavirus. The Minneapolis police officer who was seen on video kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, a handcuffed black man who died in custody after pleading that he could not breathe, was arrested today and charged with murder. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
Debbie Hart is president of BioNJ, which represents the interests of more than 400 New Jersey-based biotech companies. She's also a strong voice in the biotech sector, supporting research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology. She sees NJIT as a valuable partner in attracting venture capital and biotech startups to the Garden State.
So the number one reason that companies come here to New Jersey for the biotech industry is for our talent. We estimate that there were about 30 biotech companies in the early 90s in New Jersey, about 80 in 1998. Today there are more than 400. And that growth continues, and it's come from every possible angle. Other countries, other states, they've spun out of our academic institutions as well as our biotech and our pharma companies, and we expect that growth to continue long into the future. And NJIT is a pipeline for talent, for companies, for entrepreneurs to do that important work.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya Raines, and her husband Robert Friedman, Jewish activists and philanthropists, talk about why they chose the Jewish Communal Fund for their charitable giving.
As very busy working parents, we wanted to focus more on the charity part of it and wanted to focus more on our children and less on the administration.
The Jewish Communal Fund is one of the oldest and largest donor-advised funds, but at the same time, they're totally up-to-date and have state-of-the-art systems for us to access and manage our contributions online. The assets in our fund at the JCF grow tax-free, so we can generate more charitable dollars to support the charities that we care about most.
Let JCF minimize your taxes and maximize your charitable giving.
We're incredibly passionate about our charity, and the JCF allows us to focus more on the charity and on the administration and the headaches.
For more information about Jewish Community Fund, visit our website at jcfny.org and request a new fund kit.
Bloomberg. This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now. Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Okay, here we go. With the NFL Draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season, like the Ringer NFL Show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
Your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like,
of course.
Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, What do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike. Just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
This is Mike Golick Jr. from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo, Dad, and I sit down and discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala. He scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A winning week for the U.S. stock market. An up Friday and an up month of May, with the S&P up 14 today. That was a gain of 0.5%. The S&P at 3,044, gaining 0.5%. The Dow down 17 points, lower by 0.1%, while NASDAQ picked up 120 points today, up by 1.3%. While the president did blast the communist country China for its actions on the pandemic, and in Hong Kong, traders took some solace in the absence of new economic restrictions. The 10-year, 0.65%, gold up 0.8%, 17.31 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 4.9%, 35.36 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, we have been talking so much. Talk about things we've been talking about around the dinner table, and certainly on this show and with everyone we encounter. What does the office look like on the other side of this? What does work look like on the other side of this? A great guest to talk about that is Vicki Mueller-Berg. She is the Chief Diversity Officer at Qualcomm, joining us on the phone from San Diego. Vicki, really nice to have you with Carol and myself.
Thank you, Carol and Jason, for having me.
All right, so just right out of the gate, what's the most profound thing that will change about work when we are back in the office, or when offices are allowed to reopen? I'm trying to be very careful about using the phrase back to work, because everybody who is fortunate to have a job has been working. But this sort of back to a more traditional office environment, I know, is going to be different. What do you think is the biggest change?
Yeah, I think the biggest change, which is really an exciting change, is that we almost instantly learned that we can be very productive without necessarily, being in the same office space. That at Qualcomm, we met every product deliverable so far. Within 24 hours, we had 98% of our employees that were virtually connected back to the network. And I think if we had planned for that, we would have never said, yeah, let's go for it. But we didn't plan for it, but we were ready and we stayed productive. And I think we're going to carry over a lot of those great learnings post-pandemic.
So what does that carryover mean? Does that mean for permanent people working from home? What does it mean, the carryover?
Yeah, we think so. We, as the Chief Diversity Officer, we do a lot of studies about what employees want, and we're looking at all the competitive factors. And really, all employees want some level of flexibility. And at Qualcomm, ironically, even though we're a wireless communication company, we were very meeting centric in the office. Even though we were in 30 countries around the world, very meeting centric in the office type of company. And now I think we've proven that we have technology and tools to allow that kind of flexibility and perhaps retain employees who didn't want to drive to the office every day, or attract new employees who may not want to move